Like hundreds of the thousands who have come through the door of our rescue center named the Better Way or Columbus Dream Center, one day I just noticed he was there. A nameless face from who knows where, going nowhere in particular, stooped from the weight of the huge plastic trash bag slung over his shoulder. One might have thought he was the Black Santa of the homeless camps. His heavy coat, smudged glasses, and full beard enhanced that image. But alas, Mr. Brown was no Santa Claus. Reeking with the smell of the camps, that mixture of body odor, urine, and the soot of many campfires. He had not bathed in ages, and I was pretty certain that he did not live at the North Pole. And unlike Santa, Mr. Brown was anything but jolly. His facial expression said anger, danger. He had a mercurial temper that could go off without notice. Mr. Brown was one of the thousands of mentally ill who walk our streets and are simply designated as homeless. Almost every night he would come to our center, sit with his back to a wall and glare at anyone who even acted like they wanted to approach him. Serving dinner to Mr. Brown was a challenge. On a good night, you gently slid it across the table to him while speaking to him in soft, soothing tones. On those occasions, he would wrap his arm around his plate, quickly eat his dinner, and exit without a single word. If something upset him, he would fly into a rage of unintelligible screams laced with profanity, throw his food, and possibly take a swing at anyone standing too close to him. You see, Wanda and I had prayed for God to give us the people that nobody else wanted. And Mr. Brown certainly filled that bill. If I saw Mr. Brown walking down the street, I would always speak to him. He never responded. He would just continue walking with long strides, stooped forward with that huge black bag, his eyes looking downward, avoiding contact with anyone. And other than a string of curses, I never heard him say an intelligible word. This scenario continued for several years, and I can't say that I enjoyed serving Mr. Brown. He was a test. Then one day I was sweeping up the pieces of a broken bottle on the sidewalk of High Street. Down the street came Mr. Brown with that bag slung over his shoulder, eyes down, walking quickly on his way to nowhere. "Good afternoon, Mr. Brown." Without uttering a word of response, he walked by, then stopped, turned, and walking right up to me, he looked me squarely in the eye and said, "Thank you for your marvelous church. You could have knocked me over with a feather." From that day forward, our relationship changed. While Mr. Brown did not always speak, he always acknowledged me with a nod or perhaps a grunt, and sometimes he even addressed me as Reverend, a title I don't normally use. I don't know what caused Mr. Brown to suffer a psychotic disconnect. Over time, I learned that Mr. Brown had family. He had aspirations of going back to college. He was intelligent. He wasn't an addict. He was seriously mentally ill. And even though we had mental health services available, Mr. Brown refused that service. The last time I served dinner to him, Mr. Brown was sitting alone at a table. He nodded as I handed him his plate. Then he paused and said, "Reverend, your church has helped a lot of people. I'm one of them." My friend Mr. Brown was found dead recently in Goodale Park, frozen to death in a public park surrounded by million-dollar houses. One of the truths that I have learned to accept is that I cannot make anyone well. I don't have the power to make anyone's life perfect, but I'm thankful I had the opportunity to help Mr. Brown on his journey of life and to make it better. I wish it had ended differently, but that's out of my control. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to know and love Mr. Brown. How's life going for you? Is your journey of life smooth sailing, or are the waters rough and maybe even threatening to pull you under? I want to share two truths that never change. The first is wherever you are on the journey of life, it's okay. There is a God who loves you and will accept you wherever you are, regardless of what you have done or who you have become. Living in the penthouse or like Mr. Brown living in the tent house, it doesn't matter. God will embrace you and accept you right where you are. The second truth is this: God loves you far too much to leave you where you are. If you will allow God to lead, He will take you places you could never go alone. I'm Steve Campbell. Drop me an email at the address on your screen or messenger me on the Journey of Life Facebook page. I would love to hear about your journey. Tell me where you are and where you would like to go, where you would like the journey of life to take you. And until next time, when we meet on the journey of life, may God's best blessings be yours.